The U.S. Army lied to the world, to Denmark, to its own taxpayers, billions of dollars, buried under 2 kilometers of Arctic ice, funding a nuclear catastrophe that's still unfolding right now, in 2025, and almost nobody knows the full story. Here's what they told you. A science base, a research station, brave American soldiers studying snowflakes and ice cores in the most hostile environment on Earth. Here's what they didn't tell you. 600 nuclear missiles, hidden inside a moving glacier aimed directly at Moscow, a covert weapons platform disguised as a weather station, built on sovereign Danish territory, without the knowledge or consent of the Danish government, and beneath all of it, a toxic time bomb that engineers promised the ice would swallow forever. The ice had other plans. This is Project Iceworm, and this is the story they spent 60 years hoping you'd never hear. Stay with me, because in about 4 minutes, we're going to talk about the one piece of technology at the heart of this operation that should have never been deployed in that environment, and why the Army knew it before they turned it on. It starts with a problem. The Cold War isn't a history lesson yet. It's the air you breathe. Every morning you wake up not knowing if tonight is the night the sirens go off for real. The Soviets have missiles. The US has missiles. And both sides understand the terrifying logic of what strategists call a first strike. Hit the enemy's launch sites before they can fire back. And you win, which means your missiles need to be unfindable. Fixed launch sites? Satellites can photograph them. Submarines? Too slow to reposition. Bombers? They can be intercepted. The Pentagon needs something radical, something invisible. A U.S. Army general named Arthur Trudeau looks at a map of Greenland and has an idea so audacious, so borderline insane, that even his colleagues pause before signing off on it. What if you hid the missiles inside the glacier, not on top of the ice, not near the ice, inside it, a network of tunnels, 4,000 kilometers of them, housing 600 nuclear warheads on a constant rotation schedule, moving, shifting, impossible to target because by the time a Soviet spy satellite photographs the position, the launcher has already moved. The plan is brilliant. It is also completely illegal under the terms of the agreement the United States has with Denmark for the use of Greenlandic territory. But that detail gets buried right alongside everything else. If you've ever wondered how governments hide programs this massive in plain sight, subscribe now and join thousands of history detectives who are done being kept in the dark. Hit that subscribe button. You will not regret it. To make Project Iceworm work, they need a proof of concept. They need to know, can you actually build and sustain a functional installation deep inside the Greenland ice sheet? The answer arrives wearing a cover story, Camp Century. Officially, a scientific research station. The Army releases photographs, clean corridors, smiling soldiers, a cafeteria, a chapel, a barbershop, everything a young American serviceman could need. 30 meters beneath the surface of the Arctic. The press eats it up. Life magazine runs a full spread. America conquers the ice. They might as well have headlined it. And the world nods approvingly at this triumph of engineering and optimism. 300 men live inside Camp Century at its peak. They eat hot meals. They watch films on Friday nights. They breathe recycled air that carries the faint metallic smell of cold steel and machine oil, a smell that never quite leaves you, according to the men who were there. But here's what makes Camp Century genuinely unlike anything built before or since. At its core, in a reinforced chamber carved from the ice itself, sits the PM-2A. The world's first mobile nuclear reactor. Let that land for a moment. A nuclear reactor transported in pieces across the Arctic, reassembled inside a glacier, running on enriched uranium, generating enough power to heat and light an entire underground city. It hums, day and night, a low, constant, almost subsonic vibration that the soldiers feel in their boots more than they hear with their ears, like standing next to something that knows exactly how dangerous it is, and doesn't particularly care. The Army is proud of this. They should be. From a pure engineering standpoint, the PM-2A works. It heats the tunnels. It keeps the lights on. It proves the concept. What it also does is generate radioactive coolant waste that has to go somewhere. And in 1959, Somewhere means a storage area inside the ice, on the assumption that the glacier will compress around it and seal it permanently. That assumption will come back to haunt everyone, but right now, 1960, 1961, 1962, Camp Century is a triumph. The cover story is holding. Project Iceworm is moving from concept to planning phase. The tunnel network diagrams are being drawn. The missile specifications are being matched to launch configurations. And then, the ice starts to move. If you were around during the Cuban Missile Crisis, if you remember what it felt like to not know, then this story is for you. This channel exists for people who demand the real history. Subscribe and join us. You've earned the truth. Here is what the engineers got wrong. Ice is not rock. It looks like rock. It feels like rock when you press your palm against a tunnel wall 30 meters below the surface. Cold, hard, immovable. But ice is a fluid, technically, physically. The Greenland ice sheet is a slow-motion river, billions of tons of compressed ancient snow moving laterally toward the sea at a rate of centimeters per day. You cannot feel it, you cannot see it in real time, but you can measure it. And when the Camp Century engineers start measuring, the numbers are not good. The tunnel walls are creeping inward, fractions of a millimeter at first. Easy to dismiss, easy to attribute to thermal fluctuation, to measurement error, to the kind of noise in the data that disappears when you average it out. Except it doesn't disappear. The ceiling of the main corridor drops, barely, but measurably. Steel support beams rated for decades of load begin to register micro-deformations. The reinforced intersections where tunnels meet, the most structurally critical points in the entire installation, start showing stress fractures. The ice is not intimidated by American engineering. Imagine being a soldier stationed there when it starts. You're in your bunk at 0200 and you hear it. Not an explosion, not a crack. Something worse. A groan. Low, slow, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sound of 1,000,000 tons of 10,000-year-old ice deciding, without malice, without urgency, that it wants its space back. The engineers redesign, they reinforce, they adapt, because that is what they are trained to do. But every adaptation buys less time than the previous one. And in the classified annexes of the Camp Century progress reports, the word that starts appearing with increasing frequency is one that military engineers hate more than any other: unsustainable. If Camp Century, 21 tunnels, 300 men, one small reactor, is already losing the battle against glacial movement, then a 4,000-kilometer tunnel network housing 600 nuclear missile silos never had a chance. The math is brutal, and the math is final. The government thought the ice would hide their secrets forever. They were wrong. Drop a wake-up in the comments if you think the American public deserves the full truth about what was buried in their name. A decision is made, not in a congressional hearing, not in a press conference, in a memo. One of dozens of memos, each one a little more direct than the last, each one building toward the same conclusion. Project Iceworm is dead. 600 missiles will never be hidden under the Greenland glacier. The physics don't allow it. The ice doesn't allow it. Camp Century limps on for a few more years. The science work is real, and the Army isn't ready to abandon the cover story entirely. Ice core samples extracted from those tunnels will eventually become some of the most scientifically valuable data in paleoclimatology. But in 1969, the last soldiers leave. They walk out through the tunnels. They climb the access shafts. They feel the Arctic wind strip the warmth from their faces. And they leave everything behind, not because they're careless, because they're certain. The Army's calculation is clean and logical by 1969 standards. The tunnels will collapse under glacial pressure within years. The waste, the diesel fuel, the sewage, the polychlorinated biphenyls used as coolant, the low-level radioactive effluent from the PM2A reactor will be buried under accumulating snowfall, compressed, entombed, sealed for eternity beneath a growing ice sheet. The glacier will be their janitor. The glacier will clean up the mess. 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, 240,000 liters of raw sewage and biological waste, unknown quantities of PCBs, of radioactive cooling water, of materials that didn't even have adequate disposal protocols yet in 1969. All of it abandoned. All of it left to the ice. The last aircraft lifts off. The base falls silent. The Arctic wind closes over the access shafts like a wound sealing shut. For 20 years, nothing. For 30 years, nothing. For 40 years, the snow accumulates. The ice compresses. The waste sinks deeper. The Army's calculation appears to be holding. And then, the climate starts to change. We're coming to the part that should make every single one of you genuinely angry. The modern threat, the black leak, and the question of who pays when the bill finally comes due. That's next. Don't go anywhere. A paper lands in a scientific journal called Geophysical Research Letters. The authors are glaciologists, not politicians, not activists. People whose entire professional identity is built on what the numbers say, regardless of who it inconveniences. The numbers say this: the Greenland ice sheet is no longer gaining mass in the region above Camp Century. It is losing it. The meltwater dynamic has reversed. Instead of waste sinking deeper under accumulating snow, surface melt is percolating downward. Water is moving through the buried waste layers, mobilizing what was supposed to be permanently frozen. The scientists call the projected contamination pathway into the North Atlantic the Black Leak. 200,000 liters of diesel fuel moving toward the sea. Radioactive coolant from a nuclear reactor moving toward the sea. PCBs, chemicals so toxic they were banned internationally in the 1970s, moving toward the sea. And the projected timeline, not centuries away. Not even 1 century away. Within this century, potentially within the lifetimes of people watching this video right now, Denmark is furious. Greenland, a nation increasingly aware of its own geopolitical weight, increasingly capable of asserting its own interest, is furious in a quieter, colder, more dangerous way. Because Greenland was never told. The Danish government signed agreements allowing American military operations on Greenlandic territory. They were assured Camp Century was a science project. They were never shown the Project Iceworm files. They were never told about the nature or volume of what was buried under their land. The legal liability question remains unresolved to this day. America buried the waste. Denmark signed the access agreement. Greenland bore the consequences and had no seat at the table. 600 missiles were never launched from beneath that glacier. Project Iceworm died on a drawing board in 1966, but the waste is still there, right now, today, drifting toward the North Atlantic in the meltwater of a dying ice sheet, carrying 60 years of a secret that was never supposed to exist, toward coastlines and fishing communities that never asked for any of this. The Cold War ended, but some wars don't end when the politicians say they do. Some wars just go underground. And wait,